Our natural resources, forests and wildlife, open space, mountains and plains, lakes, streams, and wide rivers. Most people today live several steps removed from direct contact with our resources until it's time to vacation, ski, hunt, raft, or fish. We don't think of our natural resources like our grandparents did. Children born after 1960 are the first generation that are not needed for labor to produce food and fiber. For the first time in history, our view of resources is not centered on basic survival. People today are divorced from natural resources. Not many of us work the land anymore. It's a growing misperception that we don't need farms, ranches, and timber forests anymore. After all, doesn't our food come from the grocery store? Aren't our clothes created in laboratories? Don't our houses and offices magically appear on a truck? Except for recreation, why should we care about our resources today? We care because we still need our farm, ranch, and timber resources, and we equally need outdoor recreation, wildlife, open space, and diverse plant resources. So the threats to our resources must be taken seriously. Noxious weeds are one such threat. It is important that everyone, regardless of how they use our land and water, comprehend that noxious weeds do threaten the resources we need and love.
Basically what's happened with leafy spurge is it's taking over our resource of our valuable rangeland, so we basically are limiting the number of cattle we can graze to about a third those in those infested areas of what we had before.
Purple loosestrife dominates in the entire wetland. Any place that has a wetted environment or where the roots can get to the water table, the purple loosestrife will occur there. It seems to crowd out all the native plants with the exception of woody shrubs and even shrubs sometimes. It doesn't seem to affect trees all that much. All the shallow water habitats, the low vegetation habitats that occur in a wetland disappear.
Leafy spurge, knapweed, purple loosestrife, and other weeds are changing our land, and in most cases the changes are negative. Non-native weeds devalue our land and water for recreational use. Noxious weeds impact wildlife habitat, waterways, and nesting areas. Weeds degrade the scenic value of hiking and biking trails and other forms of recreation.
The main use of this land right now is for recreation. The individual weeds present here, which are primarily leafy spurge and goatweed, are also displacing native plant communities, which a lot of people like to see. They like to see the wildflowers, they like to see the native grasses, they like to see the deer and the bears and the coyotes that kind of wander in through here. And so the native ecosystem here is being replaced by the weed.
Today, there is hope for reclaiming our resources from noxious weeds. We can protect our farms and ranches, and we can enhance plant diversity and wildlife habitat with environmentally sound methods. This program is an introduction to integrated weed management systems. We will introduce you to a few of the leading researchers, land and wildlife managers, and others that are rapidly developing these systems to stop noxious weeds. Their work demonstrates that integrated management systems offer the best hope for reclaiming and protecting our resources. First, what is meant by integrated weed management systems? An integrated management system is a decision-making process. It centers on coordinated, ecologically based management options. Integrated weed management options include education, to help people become aware of weeds and their negative impacts. Prevention measures, such as weed-free forage programs or quarantines that stop weeds from moving into an area. Physical practices, such as mowing, hand weeding, or burning. Integrated management systems also include biological agents, such as insects and beneficial diseases. Cultural practices, such as grazing and seeding with competitive grasses. And herbicide methods, with EPA-registered products that are effective on the target species. Each one of these options may be effective by itself, but practical experience indicates that combined strategies for weed management are more effective than a single strategy. Few integrated management systems use all of the strategies just mentioned. However, the integrated systems presented in this program all use at least 2 options and several use more. We will see that it is the combining of strategies that results in successful management, that enhances our resources, and controls noxious weeds. Weed scientists from the University of Wyoming are experimenting with competitive grass seedings in an integrated system that shows promise.
We started off in 1986, right after we had leased this area for the university in establishing perennial grasses. We started off with 11 different species and sorted those down and found that there were 2 that we especially liked, and the 2 that we've selected simply for their competitive ability and their ease of establishment are the Bezoyski Russian wild rye that we have in this area right here, and the Luna pubescent wheatgrass that we have over in this area. When we established these in 1986, we found that these 2 were the very best that we could compete with, and since '86 we've continued to monitor those plots and maintain somewhere in the neighborhood of 90% leafy spurge control with no chemicals for the last 5 years. So I think that's showing us that we can use competition even though we haven't grazed these plots. When we talk about the 2 species, the Bezoyski Russian wild rye and Luna pubescent wheatgrass, we also realize that we're interested in palatability. We know that we have to have something there that ranchers can use whenever they establish it on the ranch. The Bezoyski Russian wild rye we found in a lot of our grass growing trials up at Powell, where we work quite a bit with our grass seed growers, that just as soon as they get through harvesting the grass seed, then they come in with their cattle, and it is so palatable that the livestock will graze it all to the ground, even after the grass seed production. So it doesn't mature out and become unpalatable. It's also 2% higher protein level than any of our other wheat grasses that we have. So we have a real nice advantage in that a lot of our wildlife species really prefer the Russian wild rye to anything we have. In some areas that we've got established near McFadden, Wyoming, the elk come down and they select out the Bezoyski Russian wild rye in the fall and winter and use it completely up before they move to the other grass species. The Luna pubescent wheatgrass is about 2% lower protein, but we produce more pounds of total forage per acre than we do with the Bezoyski Russian wild rye.
This Wyoming work shows that these grasses, when they can be established, will simply outcompete weeds like leafy spurge.
But this one leafy spurge plant is growing in the center of this particular group of grasses. You can see that highly competitive root system and the effects on the size of the leafy spurge plant that we have growing in the center of this, and every plant is at least a foot away from our leafy spurge plant. But it just does not get enough moisture to even produce a seed head as we have on the outside of this area where we don't have the Bezoyski Russian wild rye.
Seeding with competitive grasses is just one integrated management option meeting success. In several other states, weed scientists are also testing integrated systems that combine grazing and herbicides, grazing and insects, and grazing, insects, and herbicides. In each case, the goal is twofold. First, find the right combination of integrated options for different types of weed-infested sites. Second, use the right integrated methods to control the target weed and protect the threatened natural resource.
What we're doing here is trying to incorporate herbicide treatments with goat grazing. And what we've done is either sprayed ahead of the goats before they came in and grazed, or we spray in the fall after the goats have grazed. And we're trying to see whether it's better to let them go ahead and graze during summer and then spray it, or spray in the spring before they graze, or not spray at all. Maybe grazing is good enough. And also we're comparing the kind of control you get with grazing to just spraying alone. And you can see that this is a ungrazed area. They were in here a little while back, and they've grazed all this area out, and this is a check plot, and you can see how dense it was. And over on this side, we have where we sprayed early in June and they came in late June, and it kind of surprised us that they went ahead and ate the sprayed leafy spurge anyway. They ate the flowers and they ate the leaves off that had already died and were turning brown.
Noxious weeds infest many types of sites. These sites are often near water, or in trees, or on soils where one type of control may not be possible. Many of our worst weeds like spurge, knapweed, loosestrife, and Canada thistle are not native to this country. They are perennial plants and prolific reproducers. They have few or no natural enemies in our habitats to keep them in check, and they easily outcompete our native vegetation and spread rapidly. These undesirable plants are tough to manage and require persistence. These facts about the weeds that impact our natural resources are important to understand. It is why they often require an integrated or multi-pronged approach to manage. And it is why most integrated management systems are designed to work over time, rather than offer quick fixes that often don't yield lasting results. Integrated management systems use educational, preventive, physical, biological, cultural, and herbicide options. Often the prevention and public education options key an integrated effort. The U.S. Forest Service uses such an approach in western Montana.
The selected alternative in our environmental impact statement was a program that emphasized number one, prevention, and number two, direct control of noxious weeds where we could have the most effect versus where there's the most weeds. As part of the prevention effort, we went through and we looked at all of the forest management activities that we do, from road building to recreation management, timber harvest to cultural resource management to fire management, through the whole gamut. And we looked at the physical activities that happen as part of those management activities and the effects those have on the site in terms of weed establishment. Our direct control program is an integrated pest management program involving physical, biological, education, and chemical control methods. On a site-specific basis, once we've identified an area that's at moderate or high risk and fits one of the priority areas, we do environmental analysis to determine the best tool or mix of tools to treat the weeds on that site. In our site-specific analysis, we look at which tool or combination of tools will have the best result on that individual weed species based on the control objective for that weed, based on the site in which that weed occurs, and based on whether it's a low, moderate, or high-risk site for establishment of that or other weeds.
In Washington State, an integrated management system was developed to fight purple loosestrife. Loosestrife is a wetland weed that has placed 100,000 acres of wetlands in central Washington at risk. This weed totally replaces all natural vegetation and ruins duck and goose nesting sites. To combat the threat, Washington Department of Wildlife officers have integrated public education efforts with hand clipping and herbicide treatments. A statewide interagency steering committee coordinates their education and prevention efforts. The committee developed purple-colored awareness pamphlets, signs, reports, and control manuals. A unique part of their effort is the use of public groups to clip and bag loosestrife seed heads to prevent further spread. Department of Wildlife officers also use inmate labor to attack this weed. 3-man inmate teams clip and bag seed heads and apply selective herbicides to prevent these beautiful but destructive plants from spreading. Finding the right options for a particular weed on a specific type of site, and integrating these options into the right timings and sequences. These are the goals of weed managers as they develop even more types of integrated management systems. In many situations, land managers are using older methods like mowing with the new. Again, the keys to success are finding the right combination of options with the right timing for the right site and weed species. When these keys are found, we manage the weeds and protect our resources.
An integrated management system is one where a land manager would employ more than one weed control tool. There are 4 tools: mechanical, chemical, biological, and cultural. and that where a weed manager would combine at a minimum 2 of those tools into a system of management at a specific site. Now, in the case of this study, the whole premise of setting up the plants with mowing is so we can use a reduced rate of herbicide. That represents not only economic savings, but probably more importantly, an environmental savings, in that we're reducing the herbicide load into the environment.
Integrated management systems. Combined strategies for weed management that are more effective than a single strategy. Decision-making processes that enhance our environment and protect our resources. You can play a role in implementing these management systems. As we have just seen, education and awareness are vital parts of integrated systems. Anyone who loves and uses our natural resources can participate in preserving and renewing these resources. Begin by increasing your knowledge and awareness of weeds as you work or play outdoors. Next, support local land managers and researchers in their efforts to establish integrated systems. Finally, answer the call to help directly in clipping, prevention, education, or other similar efforts. Regardless of where we live or work today, we are linked to the land and water for our food, for our shelter and health, and for our leisure and play. We rely on the elements of nature. Their stewardship falls to us. Our resources will remain renewable and enhanced only as long as we work together to keep them so.